Okay, please stick with me for this video, please, because I'm having this download and I'm not a science girly, and so it's okay if you're not either, but please hang in there because this might actually connect with you. So there's this experiment with protons where basically there's a wall with a solid wall with two slits, right? Two skinny slits in it. And then there's like a wall on the other side of that. And they're firing protons at this solid wall with the two splits. And they expect that when the proton goes through those two slits, that on the what it will imprint, the image it will create will be the same, two slits. Imagine that you're shooting like paintballs, you're firing paintballs at a wall that only has two little slits in it. And when you look at the other side where the paintballs landed, you'd expect to see the same form, right? The same like structured lines of where they came through. When they do the experiment, they end up realizing that when they place an observation measure, basically like a camera, in the room, that's exactly what happens. The protons go through the wall and they go in two perfect lines in the exact same shape as the slit that they came through. But when they remove the camera, when there's no observation of the protons and what's happening, something totally different happens. The protons actually, this is where I'm not your science teacher, right? But the protons act as waves instead of particles. Okay, so in the first example, when the camera is observing the protons, they act as particles, which means that they do what they're supposed to do. How I would say that is they behave themselves, right? But when there's no camera and no observation, they don't behave, and they spread out, and they end up seeing that the paint, instead of being in the perfect shape of what the hole that it came through, it's like all of these lines, all of these infinite possibilities, infinite probability, infinite possibility. If you're still with me, I understand if you're not, because I'm like, I know I'm just not a science girly. I have seen this example, I've watched this video, I've heard this many times, and it never really like clicked for me. Like I was like, okay, when it's being observed, something's happening. When it's not being observed, something different's happening. Okay. And then I heard another example where a philosopher was talking about like mountains and Mount Everest, for example, and how do you really know that something exists if you are not observing it? So almost like a video game, and how when you go into each room of a video game, it only loads itself because you are present. Does that make sense? Like it's only activated because of your awareness of it. But if you're not there, how do you know it actually still exists? Do you think that the entire game is just waiting for you, even if you never go to certain sections? It's not. It's not technically forming itself or behaving itself until you open the door and it realizes it needs to be available for you. And there was a philosopher who made a similar point of like, people can tell you that Mount Everest exists. You can look at people's pictures. They can tell you stories of when they've been there. But how do you know it's there when no one is there? How do you know that part of the game is loaded? Okay. So then it made a little bit more sense. But today was the day when I read in my book, they brought up the example of the slit experiment. Right now I'm reading Becoming Supernatural, and this book is unlocking my whole entire life. And it brought up the slit example, and it talked about how our entire life and the whole universe is made up of these same protons. So that example of the protons behaving one way when observed and behaving a different way when not observed is the exact same as our reality, our physical reality. And that's the reason why when we see ourselves as linear, we are actually multidimensional, and everything is happening at one time. Everything has infinite possibilities, infinite probabilities. Anything can happen at any moment. But when you observe so harshly every single component of your life, every single factor of your life, every single thing that's going on, it's all under observation. So then it behaves itself. It acts in the way that you expect it to act. So when you have these factors of your life that you already have an emotional tie to, for example, social media. When you think of social media, it immediately triggers an emotional response. And because you get that same emotional response every time you think of social media, you program your neural pathways to, like, it just runs like a program. It's almost like you start your car so many times and you're so good at driving now that you could almost get in your car, start it, drive somewhere, and just be at a location, at a new destination, and not even know really how you got there, because the program ran itself. It becomes so habitual that the program just runs by itself. You don't really have to be tuned in for it to run. And you train your mind in the same way. When you get a phone call from your mother or your father and you have an emotional response from that, you get that so many times because you're responding to the predictable future. Even though it hasn't happened yet, you're using the familiar past to respond to the predictable future, and then you predict that outcome. You have the emotional response of it, and now it might as well have happened even if it hasn't happened yet, because you've already been through it. Your body has already experienced it, and now your body is trained into this program where every time you get that call, you already have the emotional experience of your expectation based off of your familiar past and your predictable future. Whoa. Okay, it's a lot. I'm like, I'm low-key cooking right now. Okay, so what this helped me see is that life is just like the game. When you think that you already know, when you allow the program to run, which is basically your observation, when you know what you think you're going to expect beyond this door that you're opening, the protons behave themselves. Everything behaves. It acts as though it should, and you walk in and you get almost what you expect. However, everything exists at the same time. So if instead of observing in every moment, if instead of basing your entire life on your familiar past and your predictable future, if you can become no one, headed nowhere, in need of no thing, not connected to your body, with no body, right, with no expectations, if you can do that and find that and just be in the very present moment, there will be no observation, and it leaves every single possibility and probability open for you. And that is how you design a brand new reality. You pull yourself out of the same. Every time, it's almost like, imagine there are 5 things you think about every single day: friends, family, food, money, and your housing, right? And you have an emotional response to each of them. And you're constantly using money as an excuse to feel lack, constantly using friends as an excuse to feel inadequacy, right? Constantly using family to feel a sense of struggle or whatever, right? And so because you have those programs running and they just run almost themselves, you almost form an addiction to these emotions without even realizing that you're addicted to them. Because it's like if you go to bed, or it's like if you have pain every single day and then one day you wake up without it, and then you wake up and you're like, where's my pain? And you remind yourself that that is the program you're supposed to be running, because you don't even realize you're addicted to feeling a certain way. It's a lot, I know, and I really hope if anybody is still here, if anyone is still here with me and you're like actually like feeling me, please say something, because I feel like low-key none of it is making any sense and I'm doing my best. But this is huge. The reason that it's so big and the reason why the slit experiment really hit for me today was because I finally realized that how everything is happening at the same moment, how everything is happening at once. I finally see that under observation, when I'm constantly like, money, how am I going to make it? How am I going to do it? What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to be? What's on my calendar? Who am I supposed to meet with? I'm having these emotional responses. All of that is direct and in serious observation of the behavior I expect, right? But in meditation especially, but the more I can connect, the more I can disconnect to connect, the more powerful I will be. The more I can say, I am no one, a girl is no one, headed nowhere, in need of no thing, right? And actually just be in my present moment, disconnected from my familiar past and my predictable future. That is how you get the unknown, and that is how you get the world to open up to infinite potential and possibility for you. And that is how you design your life.